All right. We got Zach in the house. What's up?
Hello. Hi, nice to meet you.
Welcome.
Thanks for having me on.
You too, of course. Where are you tuning in from today?
I am tuning in from Alexandria, Virginia. So, for those who don't know, basically right across the Potomac from DC.
Cool. Very nice. I like DC. I was there a few years ago. Great city, but never been where you are. And for people who don't know who you are, I mean, we're meeting for the first time right now.
Hmm.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and, what you do, what you're passionate about?
Yeah, so I'm the Chief Communications Officer at Kello. We're a small woman owned startup. We first started operating about a year ago. And essentially, our platform is an all in one planning, timekeeping, capacity tracking web app. And I guess what I'm passionate about with the business and what we're here to talk about today is using tools and systems to better the lives of your employees. Like we believe very strongly that people is the number one resource of any business. And unfortunately, I think just with where we're at in our culture, especially work culture in America, people, uh, especially in larger companies, are seen as not as valuable as they should be. So
Yeah,
we hope that our platform can be used for good in that sense.
right, right. It's so interesting. I think I got into this industry for a similar reason of like people being treated like cogs in a wheel instead of
Mhm.
humans. And it's interesting because the study that I brought up before about talent advantage is very much about, well, companies that treat their people right in these five ways and invest in these five things often have a huge advantage when it comes to talent. So I think you're very spot on there. When it comes to the specific challenge that you're addressing with, timing and keeping track of like when people work, what is your opinion? Like, well, I guess let's start with like why that problem?
So it's interesting. The our whole business, our whole tool was born out of a client need from a separate business. There we all worked at a consulting business where we had nonprofit clients, and basically someone wanted a way to see who was working on what, if they could allocate the time in a different way, and we built this tool that was essentially in Excel. And then out of that we produced this whole separate web app. And so really the main challenge that we wanted to address was an an easy way for business owners, business leaders, managers to see how time was being spent and how that time could be better spent on other things, or
Mm,
how can, because really time is a resource, right? Time is a really
right.
valuable resource. Some might say the most valuable resource. So just being able to produce a tool that people can use to figure out if time is being spent unwisely or if too much time is being spent on one thing. Again, it goes back to like employee health. uh
Hmm.
like if I'm spending 8 hours a day on a project that maybe the business does not want me spending 8 hours a day doing, it's bad for me because I'm spending way too much of my time on one thing and I'm not being able to focus on other
Right.
things. And it's bad for the business. So that's really the main challenge. I think, especially with larger companies, you can lose track of that really easily.
It's interesting because going back to our earlier conversation about managers at the top of the show, we were talking about, managers feeling stressed and overwhelmed. And I brought up a study that was done, and maybe you saw this study, like I think it was last year, where it really dove into what are the stressors of managers and what specifically are they spending their time doing? What do they want to spend their time doing that they aren't? And what are they spending their time doing that they don't want to be doing? And how can we shift some of that time over? And I see that this, platform could potentially be a really important tool to help managers get from point A to point B, but also in like showcasing to management, like, here's what I'm spending my time doing because you're telling me to do it, but here's the outcome and the impact versus what I want to be doing. and what the outcome could be, and let me tell you what that could be. And or better yet, let me show you. What do you think
Mhm.
about that?
Well, it's funny you bring that up because I think something we hear a lot and we deal with a lot as well is meetings. You're spending so much time
Yeah,
in meetings and actually I think that's sometimes the one disadvantage of remote work. I mean, we were just talking about that on the show. We're a fully remote company. I feel like you're in a lot of meetings when you're working remote and that can be an issue. So to use our tool for instance, if you are tracking what you're doing throughout the day and you can show that you spend like sometimes people spend 60% of their work week just in
right.
meetings talking. If you can actually show that like on a report and have data to back up your claims, uh, it can be really useful. And it's the same for like if you're spending way too much time number crunching or something. Like
Yeah,
I think in our modern workforce, we run into an issue as well where you're just being asked to do stuff that's outside of your original job description, which is fine. Like that happens a
100%.
lot.
Oh my gosh, it's such a big. I see it a lot with young professionals being asked to
Mhm.
like teach someone how to use a tool just because you're young. You should know how to use certain technology, and then you end up having to learn how to use that tool and in order to show someone else how to do it, and that's not. I mean, that's not in my job description. So there's a lot. Can be some like resentment there as well.
Exactly. So I think having the ability to have data to back up
Hmm.
those, I don't want to say grievances, but just to make sure that everything's being kept in check with the original vision or the original plan is super important.
So true. Just really quickly in the chat, write one thing that you spend your time doing that you'd like to do less of, and one thing that you'd like to do more of. It could be anything, it doesn't have to be work related. So just in the chat, would love to hear your thoughts on that. My last question to you is really around this perspective of, you know, people online, like people who talk a lot about careers, they talk about the importance of writing down all of the tasks that you accomplish over the course of like a quarter, let's say, in order to be more prepared to showcase the value that you add, to an organization. And I don't know if it's like necessarily time based, but there's this argument, and I think there's a lot of value there. There's this argument of like, should you be evaluating your productivity by time or should it be by impact and project based? What are your thoughts on that?
That's actually a great question. I really strongly believe that it is based on impact. The reality situation is as important as time can be, it's not necessarily a measure of success. I know success is subjective, but you could pour 100 hours into a project over the course of, who knows how many weeks, and the project could still fail. It could still be an unsuccessful
Right.
project. It's really what it comes down to it. It's what you do with that time that really matters. Like and that goes back to the people as well, allocating people as a resource and what they do best. Um, I feel very privileged to work in this company because it's the leaders really value what do you do best, what do you want to do, and having those conversations because that's how you get the greatest success output. Like
Right.
when I joined the team, there were very transparent conversations of like, I'm not a spreadsheet person, I'm not a numbers person. They asked me to work on the logo and I made the logo that we have today, and then now I'm running all the social media. So just having those conversations I think has a really big impact on success and productivity because when people want to do something and have fun doing it, that makes all the difference.
100%. It's interesting because I posted a video on TikTok, which I just started posting on. Go follow me there, please. Give me some support, some love. And it was about like people complaining about their Gen Zers and firing Gen Z like really early on after hiring them. And one of the comments I got was, and it was also about like training programs and how there used to be a lot more training and investment in employees. One of the comments was, I finish my work so fast. And then I
Mhm.
have like nothing to do the rest of the day. And I think to your point, like that's something that this tool could potentially help with is to understand, well, how much time is someone someone's spending on a specific task, how much time does it take someone, and then leveraging and then going further to ask, oh, what do you want to spend your time doing, or like what do you want to learn, and then to create that sort of channel right from there, and like start the conversation to help them get to a point where they do feel like they're learning and growing, because ultimately that's what we want, right, is to be evolving and learning and growing within an organization.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's really interesting you bring up a generational thing because that can be a communication issue as well, right? I think there are some older folks in the workplace that might, especially if they're business leaders and if it's a larger business, they might be out of touch with exactly how much time it takes to do something.
Yeah.
I think younger people, we find innovative ways, we find tools that help us do things, and it does take less time. So yeah, just having a read on everything in terms of communication, productivity, the time it takes to do stuff, it'll just help run your business better and it'll make your people happier.
100%. Well said. Well, thank you so much, Zach, for joining. I think this was a super fascinating conversation. Time's not something we typically get to talk about. So
Mhm.
thank you so much. I hope we have you back on.
Thank you so much, Danielle. I really appreciate it. It was a good conversation.
Yes. Awesome. All right. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.